regardless of walk of life, regardless of professional accolades, all of that, right? Sometimes that voice will pop up, that voice that speaks to us, and sometimes that voice will say, you're the shit. And sometimes that voice will say, you ain't shit. And the reality is, neither one of those is true. Because at the end of the day, you're just you. And all you have to do is lead with your heart, go out there, cut out the noise, whether that's external or internal, and live your truth.
My name is Wyatt Barkley, better known as Dub B. As a producer and performer, my love for music has taken me to the industry's biggest stages. But beauty is my passion, and ever since I could walk, I've been immersed in the game I love, which is golf. And I was raised to compete on golf's biggest stages. Now I'm bringing it all together. Come and join me as we feed body, soul, and mind, and unlock some of the most beautiful experiences the golf world has to offer, where everything sits above par.
From the club to the tee, come travel with Dub B. I'm dealing what's never seen, picturesque, green fairway dream, bring it all to reality, right here on Above Par.
I'm sitting here with Entertainment Executive Extraordinaire, Zach Katz, dear friend, a brilliant mind, and a leader in his community. Zach, thank you for being here.
Such a pleasure. You and I go back such a long time. When you said you wanted to chat and kind of capture some of our chemistry and some of our conversations, it was an immediate yes from me. So
I appreciate
thanks
that.
for coming over here.
Indeed. Well, you know, the world, you've touched the world in so many ways over the years. You started 22 years ago. 1996 is when you got into the business.
Yep.
Can you tell us about how you got into the business?
Absolutely. Look, I got into the music industry by initially answering my parents' call for me to create, you know, success per the immigrant dream of becoming an attorney. Mm-hmm. My parents and I came here from Moscow, from Russia, when I was 7. Wow. To their credit, they took a real chance in their mid-30s, started from scratch, came here with, I think it was $1,000, and zero English. None of us spoke any English whatsoever.
Amazing.
And, you know, by the time I was a teen, they sat me down and said, look, we brought you here for a reason. We want you to, quote unquote, make something of yourself. And we want you to be, you know, either a lawyer or a doctor. You know, for me, I knew that what a doctor did, didn't really want to do that. Wasn't 100% sure about what a lawyer did, but was open to it. And, you know, I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And if I'm going to pursue that dream that you have for me, at least I have to create my own version of the story and of the journey. And I've always been a massive music fan, and decided that I was going to become a music attorney. So my wife and I are both attorneys in our quote unquote past life. We met while we were in law school. Awesome. And launched our own law practice from day one.
Really?
I was
together?
Together. I was doing music. She was doing everything else. And, you know, it took off for both of us. From my end, you know, I was that lawyer who knew about music. If I had a new client or any client, I would sit with them for hours talking about life, talking about music, of course, talking about business, and of course, knocking out the legal work for them. But it was very different from what they were getting from other firms, simply because my 2-hour conversation with them wasn't accompanied by an immediate invoice. It was like, hey man, you're giving me a shot, I'm giving you a shot, pay me whenever you want to pay me what you can afford to pay me. And at the same time, you have a friend in me, you have an advisor, and you have somebody that really appreciates the art and music. So that approach, you know, proved to be desirable. And you know, over a couple of years, it started, you know, really becoming something, as far as just, you know, having incredible clients, songwriters, artists, producers, record labels, managers. But then about four and a half years into it, I started coming to the realization that I was in the wrong seat on the bus, so to speak. I was on the wrong side of the value chain. To me, I looked up to friends of mine who were managers, because they were building careers for their clients. They were building businesses with and around their clients. And for me, I was getting the phone call as an attorney when it was time to paper up the deal and negotiate. By the way, extremely important work, but just not something that for my taste was entrepreneurial enough. So I wanted to be more entrepreneurial. I wanted to build careers in businesses with and around my clients. And you know, I moved into music management, but it started out as an attorney.
Started out as, That's amazing. And so, you know, you mentioned about caring about your clients. It wasn't about the compensation financially.
Correct.
It was about building the relationship.
Yes, the trust.
And being there to cultivate a future together.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And that's a very giving aspect. most people think take. And that approach in the beginning is a very giving approach. I mean, I think when people give a shit,
Yep.
it means a lot.
Yep.
Because I think a lot of the times people are coming for a want and a
Yes.
need, but when you give and you share that, I mean, it magnetizes beautiful steps forward.
I agree. I mean, I think a lot of people walk into rooms with the attitude of what's in it for me.
Right.
And I think for the people who walk into the room with what can I do to serve, I think you're just met with a completely different energy.
Mm-hmm. So over the journey, I mean, we'll get back to the, highlights of the entertainment career, but self-awareness and building that, the self-realization, believing in yourself. I mean, this business is wild. You know that better than anybody.
Yep.
What has that been for you as a process, as a personal journey?
For me, it's always been a two-sided exercise. Mm-hmm. Naturally, I'm very much a go-getter, go make it happen, right? Like it's in my hands. I'm not going to wait for anyone to give me permission. Mm-hmm. And I think that's taken me, in certain times pretty far, mm-hmm. right? Overall, I think the other side of it is also trusting the universe, mm-hmm. and actually allowing the universe to speak rather than just, always be the one that's putting your point of view out on how your life should be. Show up every day, but at the same time, leave room, and hopefully lots of it, mm-hmm. for the universe to be able to speak as well, and to be able to, use you and utilize you as a vessel for what it wants. So for me, that's probably been the most challenging balance to strike, because naturally, I'm a go-getter. Mm-hmm. I don't want to wait for anyone. I want to believe that it's all in my hands, but the reality is, when I'm speaking humbly and openly, a lot of the things that I've been able to accomplish, in fact, none of them were accomplished purely by myself. They were done with partners, they were done with collaborators, they were done with friends, and I know that those people didn't come into my life randomly. I feel like there's a plan, a bigger plan out there, and that's what I've, over time, learned to surrender to and keep my ears, eyes, and heart open to.
That's magnificent. That's really true. And it's beautiful to hear that from your perspective, because I think many seeing your accolades and hearing that from you, it's going to resonate strongly.
Appreciate it.
So talking about partnerships and collaboration, who was that transitional period when you went from being the lawyer to the manager? Who was that first move? The
first move was, and again, you and I both believe in manifesting, and, as soon as I kind of came to this realization that I wanted to make a step, right? Because I wanted to be more hands-on, and I wanted to work closer with talent, right? Rather than just, kind of taking care of the transactional part of their business. One of my legal clients, which was a producer named High Tech, said, "Hey, I'm changing management. You and I have an amazing relationship. You're my lawyer. You're my friend. Would you like to be my manager?" He knew that I wanted to manage, and he saw that I was entrepreneurial and had ideas, even as a lawyer. And from there, I got a very, very lucky break. A couple of months into me taking him on, Dr. Dre reached out and was working on his, infamous Detox album, and he was putting together his squad of hit makers, and Tech was on his list, and invited Tech to the studio, and I accompanied Tech, and just struck an incredible chord with Dre, and for the next 4.5 years managed many of the writers and producers, if not most of them, that were working with Dre on Detox and other projects. Managed Rakim the entire time he was signed to Dre, and frankly, most importantly, sat at the board with Dre probably 300 plus times in the middle of the night, watching him work his magic, tweaking hi-hats and producing vocals, and telling 50 or M or Snoop how to rap, and that kind of schooling for me taught me how to make records. I'm very creative, but I don't produce or write, but it gave me my A&R chops. And Dre's a perfectionist, so watching how he worked really, really showed me what it's like to really reach for greatness. And that prepared me for the next chapter. Every single chapter prepares you for what's coming next.
Right. And then the next chapter was Beluga Heights founding?
It was. I met J.R. Rotem when I was still managing numerous producers and songwriters and working closely with the Dre camp. And people were trying to get us together for a very, very long time. But you know, for me, my plate was just really, really full, and I try to be conscious of bandwidth. So it's just like, look, it would be irresponsible for me to add anyone to the roster, no matter who they were. But you know, everybody was telling me about this incredibly talented musician who had some producer chops, but had, you know, incredible skills as a piano player. And I finally took the meeting, and him and I clicked, and just for whatever reason, just very quickly forged a really strong bond. You know, he was a guy that was really focused. He worked 7 days a week. I think when you work with talent, I think the biggest prerequisite is you can't want it more than they want it. And with this guy, he wanted it more than anyone else in the world. So for me, you know, after our first year together, in which, you know, his career went from, you know, basically being, you know, just at its starting point to, in a matter of 12 months, him becoming one of the hottest producers in the game, 60 placements in the first year, tons of recognition. Everyone wanted to be in the studio with him. Every single publication wanted to cover him. You know, the idea was, how do we take this relationship yet to another level? Right. And to his credit, it was him that came and said, listen, I love our relationship. I think what we're doing is amazing. And I know you have other clients, but imagine a world where it was just you and I, and we were actually partners, where you weren't just my manager, but you and I were partners across the board. And to be honest with you, initially, I was taken aback by his suggestion, right? Because ultimately, he was basically saying, I want you all to myself. But the reality is, it made me do something that I do frequently now, in fact, all the time, which is ask myself, how many of the people that I'm working with are truly in it for the right reasons, that are really, really recognizing this gift that they have, and are looking to maximize on it, and not only be in the game, but be at the top, very, very top of the game. And he definitely checked all of those boxes. So he and I, you know, got focused on each other. You know, again, you know, you make certain decisions, or you think you do. Maybe the decisions are made for you, universally speaking. And as soon as him and I focused on each other, blessings kept coming. His brother Tommy brought in Sean Kingston, which was our first signing to Beluga Heights, which was our, you know, record label, and that was in partnership with Sony. We had success with Sean. And then we moved the label over to Warner, where we discovered and signed Jason Derulo. Had, you know, numerous, you know, hit-making songwriters and producers signed to our publishing company. JR was doing extraordinarily well as a producer. So it's just funny. You find yourself at these crossroads, and if you're fortunate enough, you'll make the right decisions. And you know, that definitely was one of those right decisions for me.
So, characteristic-wise, you talked about, you know, this determination that not only you have, but you started seeing in other musical talents. Yes. Right? What is that determination? How could you describe that determination or characteristic?
Look, I think that we see those attributes in what traditionally would be called athletes. And I think in the music industry, which is an environment of creativity and frankly creative energy, it's a very, very different energy and a different regiment than somebody who's an athlete, who's there to perform, right? You know, you hear a lot of creators, you know, saying, hey, I need to catch that vibe, right? But there are certain creators that know how to make themselves catch that vibe. They know how to turn it on. They know themselves. They have enough self-awareness where they know how to get themselves into that zone, right? And on top of that, that's also accompanied by a discipline to where it's not a question of, do I want to work right now? It's a question of, if I'm going to be at the top of the game, how can I afford not to work right now? And I think that, you know, as you have, we both have worked with lots of talented people. I think the common denominator is really that athlete commitment. You're a creative person that has a discipline, the resilience, and the ambition of somebody who is a professional competitor. And I think that right there is probably more important than just having raw talent.
Yeah, that's very well said. But you also meditate, and you know how to take time for yourself, right?
Yes.
Explain how important that is as well.
Look, I think that it's an extraordinarily hectic world, And I think that the world is getting much more hectic than it ever has been, simply because of information, simply because we're all living, with a camera pointed at us. I think everybody's sharing their lives very, very freely in ways that people never would have before. And I think that, that combined with, the fast-paced evolution that technology has brought to every single corner of the world and every single part of our lives, it creates a very, very dynamic, but a very non-stop way of living, right? This is no longer here's my family life, here's my work life. This may sound unpopular, but to me, I don't believe in the work-life balance. To me, I believe that work and your personal life are completely integrated. I think especially what we've seen with COVID, where people brought their work into their home environment because they had to work from home. So those lines were blurred even more over the past few years, right? So if you don't figure out a way to come back to your center, and that's different for everybody. For some people, it's meditating. For some people, it's exercising. For some people, it's reading. For some people, it's writing down everything that they're grateful for. The practice is completely personal and frankly not relevant. You just have to know who you are, and you have to create that balance for yourself, right? And for me, I've been, on a quote unquote spiritual journey since I was very, very young, probably 20 years old. Again, things just, come into your world when they do.
Right.
So for me, just both from a creating the right environment, not only externally but internally, for me to be able to live, and be fulfilled, to be able to perform at the level that I expect from myself, but at the same time to expand my mind and my heart. It's always been a regimen of meditation, yoga, reading books that open up my mind, reading and listening to lectures from individuals that I think are living extraordinary lives, not purely from professional accomplishments, but also from just being in touch with themselves and everybody else in the world from a much deeper perspective. And I think that's truly a definition of success.
You've been tapped to be at the helm of some major entertainment companies.
Yep.
And you're talking about the vibration and the fast-paced world we live in. But when you're at the helm of those companies, you also choose what goes out into the universe, musically, vibrationally. What is that discretion that you use, or what is the way that you approach what you choose to stand behind at the helm of a company like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a balance, right? Because when you're running a company, you're responsible to different stakeholders, right? There's obviously in my view, your teammates and your staff and your team, right, who you've now invited to come and be on the journey with you to try to build something, right? So first and foremost, to me, it's your team, right? That's exactly. That's those are the guys and girls that are in the trenches with you. To me, I wouldn't even say close second, but I would probably say equally important are the artists that you are inviting into your world with the promise of every single day I'm going to step up for you and help you become exceptional and give you the resources and the manpower and the care and the freedom and the support that you need in order for you to be your best, right? So I think a big part of running any company is taking a position of generosity and full support towards all of the humans that you work with, right? Now, on the other side of it, it's a business, right? And there is stakeholders and frankly shareholders that expect performance, that have trusted you and your team, the people you've chosen, to be able to deliver returns on the hard-earned money that they've now invested into you and have trusted you with. So, it's always a balance between, doing what feels right for the human side of it, and at the same time being able to deliver on the business end of it. And I think the most successful people can balance those two. And I think that it's understanding and being completely in touch with the foundation of humanity, being a person before you're an executive, right? Always being a student, no matter what happens. Because if the minute you walk into a room saying, I'm the teacher, you're done. You've just cut yourself off from everything that you're there to potentially learn, right? And look, when you're heading an organization, you have to be open to doing every single job, right? You have to be able to lead the company in its direction, in how it's going to unlock its full potential. But you also have to be the guy that, when you walk down the hall, when there's a piece of trash on the floor that somebody inadvertently left, guess what? You bend down and you pick it up and you throw it away, right? So I think it's always a combination of humility, it's ambition, it's humanity, and it's always collaboration. It's always about people. And I think that's what makes the world go round. And incidentally, for me, my biggest joy is people, connecting, building, supporting one another, and learning together.
So future innovation.
Yes.
And the way that this whole universe technologically is advancing.
Yes.
I mean, we go back to a company named Rockstar Motel days.
Yeah.
That was kind of one of the first, one of the first kind of technological website companies that you were on the board of back in the day.
Yeah.
That was a new experience for both of us.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we learned a lot about, how it's ever changing and always speeding up, and terminology like HTML5 and things like that. We had no idea.
Of course.
Right. And now you, over the last years, left BMG to be involved in basically one of the biggest music tech incubators there is.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
Can you tell us more about that journey?
Yeah. I mean, look, let me, for me, first and foremost, I think that innovation and technology and all of the other buzzwords that we hear these days, Web3, metaverse, blockchain, right?
Right.
AI, AR, right? The reality is all of these new technologies are tools that are created to address the needs of the evolved human, right? Whether the needs of that evolved human on a personal level, right? Which obviously there's been a lot of evolution in the way people are looking at themselves, the way they want to live their lives, but massively also on a business level.
Right.
And I think that, when I'll give you an example, it's like, when people talk about Web3, right? The reality is it's just a solution that addresses the needs of modern day creators. I'm speaking about the music industry now, and fans. The creator now wants to be more than just a creator. They want to be the CEOs of their own careers. They want to know exactly what's going on with their business. They deserve to, right? They want to cut out everything that's no longer vital and everyone who's no longer vital to their business. And they want to be able to freely touch fans at any given moment without having to jump through unnecessary hoops. And frankly, they want to be able to reap most of the benefits therefrom, right? On the other side, we have fans or consumers that are, for a very, very long time, were happy just to passively consume, right? But today, fans want to be more than fans. Fans have evolved in their desire to actually be co-creators with their favorite artists. They want to not just own a recording, but potentially own a piece of the copyright, right? They want to be rewarded for their fandom. So technology is just an answer to behavior and desires that the modernization of any industry from a producer and a consumer perspective requires. And I think a lot of people lose track of that. It's like, well, what is that? Well, forget what is that. What is it built? What is it created to solve or respond to? And I think that a lot of people get lost in the buzzwords, right? For me, when I was at BMG, I was there for 7 years. It's an amazing experience for me. It's a company that really allowed me to grow and thrive and really, kind of get my PhD in the music industry, as I like to say. for me, towards the end of my time there, I started feeling like the music industry was out of whack a bit. And what I mean by that is, and it had nothing to do specifically with BMG or Warner or Universal, to me the music industry on a scale of 1 to 10 is the most influential art industry in the world. We live by it, we die by it, we dance to it, we cry to it, we get over death to it, heartbreak, anything and everything, right? Get married to it, right? Propose to our, beloved to it. The reality is, even though it's an extraordinarily influential art form, when it comes to recognizing its own commercial value and monetization, it's underperforming. We're selling the exact same things to the same people through the exact same channels. And we've been doing that for the past 50 years. So for me, I'm always looking at, as I like to call, cousin industries, right? And to me, the cousin industry that I always pay attention to is gaming. Gaming is a $200 billion industry. It's, 3 times bigger than the music industry, right? And until about 15 years ago, the music industry and the gaming industry really had the same value proposition to the fan or the consumer. It's like, hey kid, you like FIFA, you like Madden, great. Give us $60, here's a cartridge, go have a good time. Then they got smart. They said, you know what? Keep the 60, here's the game for free, but we're going to invite you into a highly immersive, highly collaborative, and highly personalized environment, and that same kid is spending $200 to $500 a month. The music industry, even today, in my opinion, in 2022, is still selling the cartridge, right? And I think the music industry has so much potential to evolve. And I think there's creators out there that really want to try new value propositions to their fans, new business models, right? And I think fans are dying to be more than fans. So for me, when I stepped away, to me, I wanted to master and understand how the music industry can utilize technology proactively to actually unlock lost value and to solve some of its biggest challenges. And that's what I did with Raised in Space for a period of 3 years. Looking at everything from how we discover talent to the tools that we give them, important but oftentimes boring stuff, or at least people think it's boring, like payment solutions, rights management, obviously marketing, ticketing, touring, Web3, virtual experiences. And the last 3 years have been absolutely extraordinary and fascinating for me, and the education that I received has been transformative. I've looked at 2,000 plus technology companies that are innovating the music industry, right? Made a dozen investments, worked with some of the smartest people that I can imagine or dream of working with. So to me, I think the music industry is realistically 5 years away from really, really leaning into its future, but we're starting to see signs of innovation, particularly in the community of new artists. It's very challenging to get artists who are at their peak and the people who represent them to walk away from what's already working, right? They're always going to weigh reputational risk. And by the way, rightfully so. They're always going to say, well, wait a minute, I'm making, $2 million a show, and you're asking me to spend the next 8 weeks dropping a series of NFTs, for example, just, for the purpose of simplicity. And I'm going to make $5 million doing that. Well, why am I going to spend 8 weeks doing anything when I can do 2 shows and make the same amount of money, right? So, and I think that this industry needs the Billie Eilish's and Taylor Swift's and Justin Bieber's and Travis Scott's to show us what's possible and to step out of their comfort zone. And I think until the bigger artists start doing that, I think people are going to see a very finite version of what the music industry can do.
With that being said, you said that running a company and knowing how to be the CEO of your own,
Yes.
Of any company,
Yes.
you have to be able to play every role.
Yes.
And one thing you just mentioned with all those artists, their teams.
Yes.
And you mentioned how important team was. What are your feelings as far as these younger artists who are coming out nowadays, who have the creative ability to dispense and disperse their music through all these new outlets, but not understanding those other roles that are necessary to understand to be the CEO of your own dream? Do you feel that there's a miss there that's happening, that there's more study needed, there's more time and effort needed to be put into understanding more aspects about what that takes to get to that level into how to really be and say, I am the CEO of my own dream, if you aren't willing to go pick up the trash off the ground in your own house, is what I'm saying.
Correct.
How are you going to be the CEO of your own dream fully?
Completely. First of all, I love the question, right? I think the reality is, you touched on education.
Right.
Right? And I think first of all, I think that if you're going to really call something your dream, and let's even say your goal, hopefully, right? Because to me, goals are dreams with deadlines, right? With true execution and accountability, right? You have to be the master of that domain. And I think just being in the studio, we're speaking about music artists, just being where your team tells you to be, whether it's a promo run, whether it's interviews or whatever, whether it's posting on social, is great. But how are you going to ever get to a CEO level if you're not dying to learn every single nook and cranny of this business that you're in, right? That certainly doesn't mean that you don't have partners. That doesn't mean you don't have a team that may be responsible for certain areas. But at the very least, you should know every single part of your business. And I think some artists absolutely do that. I think some artists don't really have an interest in doing that, and I think that's unfortunately their loss. And then you have artists that are kind of in the middle, and sometimes they'll have team members, whether it's managers or lawyers or labels or publishers, who actually lean in and help them educate themselves. And sometimes you also have the cases of a manager who thinks to themselves, well, if he or she, if my client knows everything, what's my place in this whole thing? So, the reality is we've seen all different versions of that, but I'm a massive believer that anybody who's going to do anything on a full-time basis with real ambition needs to know that landscape and that business inside and out.
The most important thing that I've garnered from this whole conversation is that your journey is the embodiment of that. I mean, I think a lot of people look at you and say, well, he worked with Dre, he grinded away early and became an attorney, doors open for him, he's been in the mainstream of the entertainment industry for years, and he's had those chances. But the truth of the matter is that at 7 years old, you came to this country, and you didn't even speak this language. And you were able to have a vision, a determination, and you followed through, and you went to each, and correct me if I'm wrong, but went to each, through each step as open to learn and open to help.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the most impactful things from my first meeting with you is that the situation in where you were in the industry, you were willing to listen. You were willing to listen to innovation. You were willing to listen to take time. And that moment I walked away, I was like, that's the heart of a man that I truly respect. And for that whole, what I said, the embodiment of that whole journey for you is that people may look at your story as something that's untouchable, but here you are today. You've gone through each level. You've learned, you've been able to build teams, and now you're looking for what's next. You've almost shed all the layers of what was, and now you're in total, I'm creating the next. And I see the old as not irrelevant, but something we need to evolve from, because life is about evolution. So what is the next for Zach?
I think it's a great question. Look, to me, I play by a couple of different rules that I do everything in my power to be non-negotiable with, right? Number one, I have to continue evolving. I never want to repeat myself. And, I'm a guy who, I'm extraordinarily curious. I'm a pretty quick study. I jump into things 100 layers deep once they have my interest, right? So for me, every 4 to 5 to 7 years, I'm looking at what hat do I want to put on next. And at this point, after being a music attorney, then a manager, and having my own record label, and, running BMG, and now with Raising Space, look, I think that after doing all of those things, the challenge now is figuring out where can I apply everything that I've learned from the music industry and content and talent and everything that I've learned now in innovation and technology to be able to, number one, have maximum impact, and number two, continue learning and being pushed out of my comfort zone. So you're finding me in that phase where the wheels are turning, I'm looking at the world, I'm gonna be extraordinarily ambitious in what I do next. There's definitely other forms of entertainment that are starting to catch my attention, that are interesting. At the end of the day, I simply want to be at the crossroads of entertainment and innovation. And that's where I think my next set of learnings and my next impact is going to come from.
Well, we're going to be there to celebrate and support it, brother.
Thank you, brother.
I
Thank
really
you so
truly
much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Indeed.